So this question comes up a lot from attorneys and even from clients. How can a private investigator help an attorney? Maybe you're a law firm that may not have used a private investigator much in the past, or you have, but you want to know what else they can do. Maybe you're a client that's involved in some kind of legal case, and you want to find out, should you hire the investigator first, hire an attorney, and let them hire an investigator? How does investigators and attorneys work together? Well, here are 5 ways that a private investigator can help a legal case, either directly for the attorney or for the client. And also, is it better to have the client hire the investigator or have it go through the attorney? There may be some advantages, maybe some disadvantages. Make sure you put your comments below. Let us know what you think, or questions, or even reactions to what you hear in this video. So, the most common inquiry that we get from law firms, and just to be clear, most private investigative agencies do work directly for law firms. They don't work for private civilian clients. Sometimes we do, but most of the time it's for a law firm, because when there is a need for a licensed private investigative agency, most of the time it's because there's some legal case going on, a lawsuit, divorce, small claims, judgment, litigation, something going on that needs that investigation. Not always, but usually there is. When that happens, the attorney normally is the one who says, hey, you need a private investigator, and they hire the agency. Sometimes they'll tell the client to hire the agency. But many times the attorney doesn't use the full resources of an investigator. So the most common type of case is have an investigator do surveillance on a party to find out where they're going, what they're doing, where they're doing their business, and their activity being monitored. The other part of an investigation a lot of times is looking at assets. What are their bank accounts? What are their real estate holdings? What are their business holdings? So an attorney will want to know that for litigation. Sometimes it's pre-litigation to make sure that if you're suing somebody that they actually have assets to be able to pay off a lawsuit, or also to make sure they don't have too many assets. Because if you're filing a lawsuit against somebody who has $10 million in the bank, they might be able to spend more than you can on legal fees. So that's what an attorney will do. Now, there's a lot of things that sometimes an attorney overlooks that an investigator might be able to do, and that is depositions. Almost every court case is going to have depositions where the party's going to have to sit down and answer questions. So if you're suing Joe Schmo, as part of that lawsuit, Joe Schmo is going to have to sit down and answer questions from your attorney, just like you would in court with testimony or, interrogation, so to speak. They do it outside of court so they don't waste the court's time. They do it in a deposition setting. An attorney can have an investigator sit in on that deposition and monitor the responses of that party. A lot of times you can pick up on things that are not true statements. You can provide the attorney with additional questions to ask. You can provide the attorney with clues to deceitful activity or statements or behavior. And sometimes the sequence of the questions can be influenced by what an investigator can see in that deposition. You could do the same thing with what's called discovery, where discovery is a party to a case will have to provide documents in advance of going to court, and the discovery could be, real estate records, bank records, phone records, things like that. An investigator can look at them to make sure they're authentic, to make sure they're not tampered with, they're not modified, and they're complete. They're not missing pages. Many times an attorney will just take it at face value that those deposition documents are correct, where an investigator looking at it for an hour or two can really uncover a lot of things. We've yet to see a deposition package or a discovery package that has not had misrepresentations by the other party. Period. End of story. We've looked at hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands over the years, and we've yet to find one that was accurate and complete. Many times those inaccuracies can be brought to the court's attention to have the other party have to answer for that or have sanctions or pay legal fees. So again, we're not attorneys, we're not giving you legal advice, but these are things that an investigative agency can help your attorney or you with your case. What's another way where an investigator can help an attorney? A lot of times it's finding parties, finding witnesses. Maybe you don't even know about witnesses. If you have a lawsuit against somebody, let's say with a business, and you find people who have dealt with that business, sometimes you'll find people that have information that might be helpful to you. Every business has clients, vendors, employees that, let's say, have a problem with that business. Maybe they got fired. Maybe their contract got canceled. Maybe they didn't get good service. They're going to have copies of all kind of records from doing business with that company, and they're more than willing to give them to you because they have an axe to grind. You may not know who those are, but a good investigator can find parties with conflicts of your other counterparty, your cross party, whether it's an individual or a business. You can find, let's say, prior spouses, divorce parties. You can find people that sued them before. An investigator can track these people down and obtain information from them. And if it's done by a licensed investigator on a signed investigative report, a lot of times that can be admitted as evidence, and the investigator can testify as an expert witness. Another service that investigators can offer is witness interviews. Sometimes it can be done covertly, where an investigator can insert themselves into a social environment, maybe at a restaurant or a bar, someplace that we know that a witness will spend some time, maybe at a sports arena or a gym or something like that, and just strike up a conversation with a potential witness to get information that might help the case, information that they might not give with direct examination. Now, you have to be careful. You have to make sure your attorney's giving you good advice on not contacting parties that are represented and you're not doing anything that's illegal. But there are hundreds of people in any case that has information that would help your case. And unless you know who they are, third parties, we call them, the attorney will never know to subpoena them or to get their information. Last thing in a private investigative agency can help an attorney is vetting their clients. Sometimes your client will withhold information or they'll tell you false information. And it's not necessarily you're going to get rid of your client, but you might deal with them differently if you know that they're not giving you the true story. Sometimes you can call them out on it and say, look, you told me that you had, this bank account. We found 2 other ones. If we don't know this and we get blindsided in court, it's going to hurt us. So we have ways to mitigate this damage. So an attorney a lot of times will have their own client be vetted to make sure they're representing themselves properly and have good information. So whether you're a law firm, a client, a potential client, these are ways where the attorney and the client can work together. Now, what's better? Having the client hire the attorney or having the law firm hire the agency? Or the client hire the investigator, I should say. Well, here's the pros and cons. And talk with your qualified attorney about details of this. If you, as a private party, hires a private investigator directly, in many instances, that information is discoverable, meaning that if the other side finds out you hired a private investigator, they can subpoena the records of that investigator. Now, it doesn't mean that the investigator has to give them automatically. They can, argue against the subpoena and say it's private information, and a lot of times that'll work, but it leaves the door open. If your attorney hires the private investigator, it's considered a work product, meaning that it's attorney-client privilege in most cases. So it can be kept out of discovery. Now, that may not be a big a deal. Your attorney might not want to do it because if the investigator finds something that they don't want to know about or they don't want to be aware of, now puts them in a bad spot. Most of the time when we talk to attorneys who are working with a client and they have the option of going either way, they have the client hire the investigator directly. Part of it's because of billing. If they hire the investigator and then get paid back, they have to mark it up and there's labor involved and billable hours, so sometimes they don't want to do that. But a lot of times it's because they want to have a filter on the information for the law firm. So ask your attorney who's representing you, what's better? Is it you hire the investigative agency or should we do it directly? And sometimes you might want to hire the agency before you even contact an attorney, so you know what you're dealing with. And when you go to the attorney, if you already have some investigative results, many times that'll help you get the attorney to take your case. I don't know if you've faced this, and you can put it in the comments. Many clients report to us that they have difficulty getting an attorney to take a case. It's not an automatic thing. It's not like going to buy a car and you say, I want to buy your services, and they say yes. Attorneys don't take every case that is brought to them. In fact, it's less than half of the cases they take on. So by having an investigative report, sometimes that helps you get the attorney to take your case because they can now see what you're talking about rather than just hearing your verbal story, which sometimes they've heard it a million times. You know your story inside and out, but if you describe it to them, they might not get the depth of it. It also shows that you're serious about your case if you've already started some engagement with a private investigator. Food for thought. Get good legal advice if you need it. Put the comments below. Let us know what you think. And consider clicking the follow button so you get notifications of future videos.